Choose. The master's voice was cold and majestic, echoing across the empty martial arts arena. Two swords hovered in the air. The one on the left, named Heavenly Dragon, was draped in radiant light. Dragon roars pulsed from its blade, and its sword intent was sharp enough to seemingly tear the heavens asunder. The one on the right was nameless. Covered in rust, it looked like a piece of scrap iron dug up from some forgotten corner, devoid of even a single spark of spiritual light. My name is Lin Yi. I am the most inconspicuous outer disciple of the Qingyun sect, or rather, a stray child the master picked up. Standing beside me was the master's biological son, a genius rarely seen in a century within the Qingyun sect, Long Outyan. Another classic one-of-two-choice scenario. Even a fool could guess that the good sword wouldn't be meant for me. Everyone's eyes were gathered on Long Outyan, filled with expectation, envy, and a sense of certainty. He was the child of destiny. As expected, a confident smirk curled on Long Outyan's lips. His eyes burned with intensity as he looked toward the heavenly dragon sword. Buzz! As if sensing a summons, the heavenly dragon sword let out a deafening dragon roar and instantly transformed into a streak of golden light, lunging toward Long Outyan of its own accord. The sword light circled him 3 times before finally settling firmly in his hand. Man and sword complemented each other perfectly, radiating 1,000 beams of light. Congratulations to the young master on obtaining a divine weapon. Heaven bless our Qingyun sect. The cheers of the elders and disciples rose and fell in waves. Meanwhile, the rusty sword, as if rejected by the heavenly dragon sword's aura, let out a mournful wail. With a heavy clatter, it fell from midair to the ground and rolled to my feet. Dead silence. The cheers of the crowd stopped abruptly. Everyone's gaze shifted from the high-spirited Long Outyan to the scrap iron at my feet. Then came the uncontrollable snickers. Ha ha, is that piece of junk prepared for Lin Yi? It's a perfect match. A loser paired with scrap iron, truly a match made in heaven. Behind me, my junior sister Su Qingxue, who was also my fiancé, lightly tugged at my sleeve. Her voice was as low as a mosquito's hum. Lin Yi, don't pick it up. It's embarrassing. I looked down at the sword by my feet. It lay there quietly. Its rust-covered blade seemed etched with resentment and loneliness. In this moment, I felt as if I were looking at myself. Ignoring the voices behind me, I slowly crouched down. Embarrassing? You're the one who feels mocked, not me. I think it's quite pitiful. Amidst the disdainful and mocking gazes of the entire crowd, I reached out and gently grasped that cold hilt. There was no sword intent, no spiritual blow, only a palm full of rust. Cradling it in my arms, I stood up and met my master's unfathomable gaze. Master, this disciple chooses this one. My voice wasn't loud, yet it reached everyone's ears with perfect clarity. The entire martial arts arena fell so silent that a pin drop could be heard. Then, an even louder roar of laughter erupted. Holding the heavenly dragon, Long Outyan looked down at me from above, his eyes filled with pity and contempt. Lin Yi, you really are as naive as ever. Trash belongs in the trash heap. Su Qingxue's face turned deathly pale in an instant. Her gaze was filled with disappointment and finality. I said nothing. Clutching the rusty sword, I turned and walked away. Behind me, Long Outyan stood in high spirits, showcasing his divine sword while the crowd worshipped him. But I left only a lonely silhouette behind, accompanied by a sword abandoned by the world. Returning to my dilapidated disciples' quarters, I placed the rusty sword carefully on the table. It was truly in terrible shape. The blade was covered in nicks, and the cord wrapped around the hilt had long since rotted, crumbling into ash at the slightest touch. Its appearance is worse than a fire poker. I sighed, fetched a basin of clear water, and began to wipe it down bit by bit with a cloth. Rust mixed with grime turned basin after basin of water a muddy red, but the blade remained in its decrepit state. I didn't give up. I pulled out the only few low-grade spirit stones I had left for the month, crushed them, and channeled the purest spiritual energy toward the blade. The energy vanished like a clay ox into the sea, without a single ripple of reaction. I refused to believe this. I sat cross-legged with the rusty sword across my lap, slowly channeling the meager spiritual power I had painstakingly cultivated into it, thread by thread. It was an exhausting process that drained both my mind and my cultivation. The night passed. By dawn, my face was ashen and my head was spinning. My cultivation had nearly regressed to the level I had when I first joined the sect. Yet the rusty sword remained exactly the same. Knock, knock, knock. A violent pounding sounded at the door. I opened it to find Su Qingxue and her father, Elder Su, standing outside. Elder Su didn't even spare me a glance, his eyes fell directly upon the rusty sword in my room, his contempt unconcealed. Lin Yi, I have come today to annul this marriage on Qingxue's behalf. His voice was icy, devoid of any emotion. I felt a sting in my heart, but my face remained as calm as still water. Here it is, the classic annulment trope. Is it just because you saw me choose a broken sword and think I've completely lost my future? Su Qingxue kept her head lowered, not daring to look at me. She whispered, Lin Yi, we aren't suited for each other. Not suited? I laughed. 3 years ago, when Master arranged our engagement, why didn't you say we weren't suited? Until yesterday, when you were calling me Brother Lin Yi with every breath, why didn't you say we weren't suited? Now that Long Outyan has obtained the heavenly dragon sword and I have chosen this piece of scrap metal, suddenly we are not suited? My voice wasn't loud, yet every word cut to the bone. Su Qingxue's face flushed red and then turned deathly pale. Elder Su, however, flew into a rage. Presumptuous! How dare you compare yourself to the young master? The young master is a heaven-sent genius wielding a divine weapon, his future is limitless. And you? Clinging to a piece of junk and feeling smug about it, you are simply wallowing in your own ruin. He pointed at me and snarled, a daughter of my Su family will never marry a piece of trash like you. Today, this engagement will be broken whether you like it or not. With that, he slammed a letter of annulment into my face. From this moment on, you have nothing more to do with the Su family. The sharp edge of the paper sliced across my cheek, leaving a faint trail of blood. I didn't wipe it away. I simply bent down and picked up the annulment letter. Then, right in front of the father and daughter, I slowly tore it to shreds. The engagement was set by my master. If it is to be broken, it should be done by him. I looked Elder Su in the eye and said word by word, but rest assured, it isn't your Su family breaking it off with me, it's I, Lin Yi, who no longer wants you. You! Elder Su trembled with rage. Get out! I shut the door, locking the sight of their faces outside. Leaning against the wood, I slowly slid down to the floor. It really hurts. Not my face, but my heart. I looked at the rusty sword on the table, it remained as silent as ever. You think I'm a failure too, don't you? I gave a self-deprecating laugh. No matter. As long as you do not wake, I will continue to nourish you, day after day. I sat cross-legged once more and infused my spiritual energy into the blade. This time, I held nothing back. I had been expelled from the inner sect. The reasons given were disrespecting an elder, a lack of ambition, and being a piece of rotten wood that cannot be carved. I was stripped of all the privileges afforded to inner sect disciples and cast out to the most remote handyman quarters, tasked with chopping wood and carrying water. No one was surprised. A loser clutching a piece of scrap metal belonged in the garbage heap anyway. My new residence was a drafty woodshed where the air reeked of dampness and decay. My treatment has taken a nosedive. But that's fine, at least it's quiet. The only thing I had brought with me was that rusty sword. I called it Kanyuan. The remnant abyss. By day, I chopped wood and carried water, performing the most grueling labor. By night, I used all my spiritual energy and all my focus to nourish Kanyuan. My cultivation plummeted, dropping from the 3rd level of Qi refining to the 1st, making me nearly the lowest ranked person in the entire Qingyun sect. Ridicule and bullying followed me like a shadow. Yo, isn't this our sword nut, Lin Yi? Still clutching that precious lump of yours today? Several handyman disciples surrounded me, malicious smiles plastered on their faces. The leader was named Zhang Hu, a man who relied on his brute strength to act like a local tyrant in the handyman quarters. Clutching Kanyuan, I walked past them without expression. "Stop right there!" Zhang Hu blocked my path. "Kid, you don't even know how to greet brother Hu? What is that thing in your arms? Let me have a look." As he spoke, he reached out to snatch Kanyuan from my arms. My gaze turned cold, and I stepped aside to dodge him. "Don't touch it," I said in a low voice. "Heh, it's just a piece of scrap iron. What if I do touch it?" Infuriated, Zhang Hu swung a fist directly at my face. He was strong and sturdy. If that punch landed, I would be bedridden for at least half a month. Perfect timing. I was just looking for a place to test my blade. In that lightning-fast moment, I did not dodge. Clutching Kanyuan, I met Zhang Hu's fist with its rust-covered blade. Thud, a dull impact rang out. I stumbled back 3 steps, my arm jolted numb. But Zhang Hu was clutching his fist, letting out a scream like a slaughtered pig. "Ah! My hand! My hand!" His fist was a bloody mess, a bone-deep gash cutting a gruesome sight. The surrounding laboring disciples stared in stunned silence. They couldn't understand how a piece of scrap metal could possess such power. Neither did I. I had only parried out of instinct. Kanyuan hadn't even been unsheathed. This wasn't me. Was it the sword itself? I looked down at Kanyuan in my arms. It remained as rusty as ever, as if everything that had just happened was merely an illusion. But Zhang Hu's mangled fist told me that it was all very real. You dare injure me. Just you wait." Hurling a parting threat, Zhang Hu scrambled away on all fours. The looks from the surrounding disciples shifted from mockery to dread. Ignoring them, I clutched Kanyuan and hurried back to my woodshed. Once the door was shut, my heart continued to pound wildly. I placed Kanyuan on the table and gently traced the spot where it had collided with Zhang Hu's fist. There, a small flake of rust seemed to have peeled away, revealing a color beneath that was deeper than the darkest night. A faint, nearly imperceptible chill radiated from that darkness, instantly seeping into my fingertip. My body shuddered violently. That wasn't spiritual energy. It was a power like nothing I had ever felt before, one brimming with destruction and devouring intent. There's something strange about this sword. From that day on, I began to feed it frantically. Since spiritual energy was useless, I would try something else. I took the axes I used for chopping wood, the iron buckets for carrying water, and even discarded iron pots from the kitchen. As long as it was metal, I found a way to get it and let Kanyuan make contact with it. With every touch, the deep, dark blackness on Kanyuan's blade expanded slightly. Every piece of metal it touched became incredibly fragile without exception, as if all its essence had been drained away. "So, you like to eat this? You picky fellow." To others, my behavior seemed even more insane. "Look, Lin Yi is picking through trash again. He couldn't be trying to use that scrap metal to reforge that useless sword of his, could he? Mad. He's completely lost it." I didn't care about their gossip. In my world, only Kanyuan remained. A month later, a palm-sized area on Kanyuan's blade had regained its original pitch-black color. It still lacked any spiritual glow, but its restrained texture, one that seemed capable of swallowing all light, fascinated me. Meanwhile, my cultivation had unknowingly returned to the 3rd level of chi refining, thanks to the daily cycle of exhausting my spiritual power and then frantically absorbing the world's spiritual energy to replenish it. My foundation was even more solid than before. One day, the overseer of the chore hall gave me a task. "The sword tomb on the back mountain needs a gravekeeper. You go." The sword tomb, the burial ground for the swords of the Qingyun sect's past disciples. It was a place of chilling energy and crisscrossing sword intent. Any ordinary disciple staying there for too long would suffer mental damage. This was undoubtedly an attempt to push me to my death. The sword tomb? Isn't that like throwing a rat into a granary? Far from being afraid, I was overjoyed. Thank you, Overseer. Clutching Kanyuan, I walked toward the back mountain without looking back. The sword tomb certainly lived up to its reputation. The moment I stepped inside, countless lingering strands of sword intent rushed at me like a legion of vengeful spirits howling in my ears. Any ordinary disciple would likely have lost their mind and suffered a cultivation deviation. But in that moment, Kanyuan hummed softly in my arms. It was an emotion of joy. I could feel its longing. It craved everything here. I found a place to sit and, for the first time, drew Kanyuan completely from its tattered scabbard. Whoom! As the blade, a mix of pitch black and rust, was fully exposed to the air, the thousands of broken swords throughout the tomb seemed to be triggered by some mysterious force, letting out a piercing, collective wail. They were afraid. In the next second, something incredible happened. Strands of visible, grayish residual sword intent were uncontrollably stripped from those discarded swords, transforming into streaks of light that vied with each other to surge into the Kanyuan in my hand. Kanyuan was like a bottomless black hole, refusing no one and devouring every bit of sword intent. On the blade, large chunks of rust began to flake off. That profound pitch blackness, like the purest night, spread rapidly. My hand was trembling. Not out of fear, but out of excitement. Eat. Eat. Once I've fed you your fill, let's see who still dares to call you scrap metal. I could feel an unimaginably majestic power awakening within this sword. I stayed in the sword grave for 3 months. During these 3 months, the residual sword intent in the sword grave was nearly devoured to exhaustion by Kanyuan. As for Sun Yuan's blade, 2/3 of it had already returned to its original appearance. It was an indescribable pitch black that did not reflect light, it seemed to swallow one's gaze. On both sides of the blade, a thin blood-red line stretched from the guard all the way to the tip, like 2 sleeping blood dragons. I tried to swing it. It was heavy. Heavier than any weapon I had ever felt before. But when I channeled spiritual power into it, it became as light as nothing. I casually swung the sword at a half-man-high bluestone nearby. There was no sound. No resistance. The bluestone was split smoothly down the middle, the cut as polished as a mirror. Is this a fucking power saw? I sucked in a breath of cold air. One had to realize that I had only used the most basic spiritual power, without even activating a shred of sword chi. This was merely Sun Yuan's inherent sharpness. Over these 3 months, my cultivation had also progressed by leaps and bounds, reaching the 5th level of the chi refining realm. This cultivation speed was no longer any slower than the genius disciples of the inner sect. Just as I was immersed in the joy of my rising strength, the arrival of an uninvited guest shattered the tranquility of the sword grave. It was Su Qingxue. She was as beautiful as ever, her white robes as pure as snow, looking like a celestial maiden who didn't belong to the mortal world. But at this moment, the gaze she turned upon me was full of conflicted emotions. Lin Yi, I. She hesitated, the words dying on her lips. Is there something you need? My tone was indifferent. I was no longer the boy I was 3 months ago, the one whose heart would ache at her every word. I heard you were here guarding the sword tomb. She looked at me, then at Kanyuan by my side, a flicker of surprise passing through her eyes. Your sword. It seems different. Of course. After being fed an all-you-can-eat buffet for 3 months, how could it be the same? Speak your mind, junior sister Sue. I don't want to waste time. A flash of awkwardness crossed her face before she spoke. Next month is the sect grand competition. I hope you'll participate. The sect grand competition? I paused, startled. It was a grand event that only inner sect disciples were eligible to enter. What right do I have to participate? I went to the elders and managed to secure a spot for you. Su Qingxue bit her lip. Senior brother Long. His cultivation has advanced significantly over the last 3 months, he has already broken through to the 7th level of chi refining. He has specifically named you as his challenger for the competition. Challenge me? I chuckled. A future sect master wielding a divine weapon wants to challenge a wood-chopping servant like me? Isn't he embarrassed? He doesn't want to challenge you. Su Qingshua's voice suddenly rose. He wants to humiliate you. He wants to prove to everyone just how foolish your choice was back then. He wants to make sure you can never hold your head up again. She paused, her voice softening. Lin Yi, I know you're still angry with me. But I don't want to see him destroy you. Give up. Don't go to the competition. Leave the Qingyun sect and go as far away as you can. I looked at her and remained silent. After a long silence, I finally spoke. Thank you for your kindness. But I'm going. Not only am I going, but I'm going to show everyone who the real failure is. I tightened my grip on Can Yuan. As if sensing my fighting spirit, the blood-red veins upon the blade glowed faintly. The day of the sect grand competition arrived as scheduled. The entire Qingyun sect was a cacophony of excitement. Upon the high viewing platform, my master and the various elders were all in attendance. Long Outyan, the most dazzling star of this competition, stood in the center of the arena with the heavenly dragon sword in hand, basking in the thunderous cheers of the crowd. His gaze swept through the crowd, eventually settling on me, filled with provocation. What are you looking at? Never seen a handsome guy before? When the deacon elder called out my name, the entire arena fell silent for a moment before erupting into a massive wave of discussion. Lin Yi? That trash who guards the sword too? How is he qualified to participate in the grand competition? I heard junior sister Su pleaded for his spot. What a waste of her affection. Ignoring the chatter, I cradled Can Yuan and stepped onto the stage, one pace at a time. Long Outyan and I stood facing each other. One radiated brilliance, the other was utterly unremarkable. The stark contrast only intensified the mockery from below. Lin Yi, I truly admire your courage, Long Outyan said, looking at me with disdain. To step up here despite knowing you're only inviting humiliation. Cut the talk. I slowly unsheathed Can Yuan. As the pitch-black blade emerged like the dead of night, the laughter died down, replaced by confusion. What kind of sword is that? Why is it so black? It seems a bit better looking than that old piece of scrap iron he had before? Only the master and several elders on the observation deck had their pupils contract sharply. Long Outyan also froze for a second before bursting into laughter. What? You think polishing off the rust makes it a divine weapon? Lin Yi, you're laughably naive. He wasted no more words and pointed the heavenly dragon sword at me. Today, I will show you the eternal chasm between a divine weapon and scrap iron. Roar! With a high-pitched dragon cry, the heavenly dragon sword erupted in golden light. A golden dragon phantom, condensed from sword chi, lunged at me with bared claws and fangs. The 7th level of chi refining combined with the divine heavenly dragon, the power of this strike was enough to instant kill any cultivator of the same rank. Below the stage, Su Qingxua clenched her fists nervously, her face deathly pale. Everyone believed I was a dead man. The light show is decent, but I wonder about the actual power. I took a deep breath and poured every drop of spiritual energy in my body into Can Yuan without reservation. Then, I made a move that no one could comprehend. I did not move to block the ferocious golden dragon. Instead, I swung my sword toward the empty space to my left in an ordinary, plain manner. What is he doing? Is he scared witless? Slashing at thin air? A victor's smile spread across Long Outyan's face. However, in the next second, his smile froze. I swung my sword, devoid of sound or light. However, the golden dragon's shadow rushing toward me suddenly froze in mid-air, as if an invisible giant hand had seized it by the throat. Immediately after, it let out a mournful cry as its massive body split. Right down the middle. It split smoothly into two. Then, it transformed into specks of golden light and dissipated into the air. The entire arena fell into a deathly silence. This is impossible. Long Outyan stared at his dissipating sword chi, his face a mask of disbelief. He couldn't understand it. Neither could I. What did I just do? I clearly only slashed the air. I looked down at the remnant abyss in my hand. The two blood-red lines on the blade were glowing brighter than before, as if they had come to life. Space? On the viewing stand, the Grand Elder, who had been resting with his eyes closed, snapped them open and cried out in shock. What do you mean, space? Elder Sue beside him asked, looking perplexed. That strike seemed ordinary, yet it sliced through the very space itself. The Grand Elder's voice trembled. That golden dragon wasn't destroyed by sword chi, it charged headlong into a spatial rift and was shredded by the power of space. A wave of shock swept through the audience at his words. Slicing through space. That was a domain only legendary masters above the nascent soul stage could even hope to touch. And yet, a fifth-level chi condensation disciple had achieved it with a piece of scrap metal? Everyone's gaze focused once more on the remnant abyss in my hand. It was no longer with disdain or ridicule, but with fear and greed. Long Outyin overheard the elder's conversation, and his expression turned incredibly grim. Envy and rage threatened to consume his sanity. I don't believe it, he roared, pouring every ounce of his spiritual energy into the Heavenly Dragon Sword. Heavenly Dragon's secret art, myriad swords returned to origin. The Heavenly Dragon Sword erupted in light, manifesting thousands upon thousands of golden sword shadows. Like a golden deluge, they swept toward me, blotting out the sky. This was the ultimate technique inherent to the Heavenly Dragon Sword. This move was originally intended for him to seize first place in the great tournament. Now, he only wanted to use it to completely erase me and the scrap metal in my hand from this world. Below the stage, a wave of gasps erupted. Su Qingxue was so terrified that she closed her eyes, unable to bear the sight. Facing this world-shattering strike, I was exceptionally calm. I even closed my eyes. Come then, let me see just how many more surprises you have left. I fully submerged my consciousness into remnant abyss. At that moment, I felt as if I had merged into one with it. I could see the trajectories of those thousands of sword shadows. I could see the intensity of the spiritual energy contained within every single sword shadow. I could even see Long Outyin's erratic aura, caused by forcibly triggering this move. Everything was clearer than ever before. I swung my sword again. It was still such a plain, unadorned strike. It did not slash toward any of the sword shadows. Instead, it slashed toward Long Outyin himself. Or rather, the space 3 feet in front of him. A soft sound rang out. The golden rain of swords filling the sky suddenly froze. Then, as if the force guiding them had vanished, they fell clattering to the ground, reverting into the purest spiritual energy. As for Long Outyin, he stood dazed in place, motionless. On his chest, a thin line of blood extended from his left shoulder all the way to his right abdomen. The Heavenly Dragon Sword slipped from his limp hand, hitting the ground with a sharp clang. That sound shattered everyone's illusions. Long Outyin, the favored genius of the Qingyun sect, wielder of the divine weapon Heavenly Dragon, had been defeated. Defeated. So cleanly, so utterly. What kind of sword technique was that? Long Outyin clutched his chest as blood seeped through his fingers. He stared at me fixedly, his eyes filled with bitterness. I didn't use a sword technique, I said truthfully. I merely severed the spiritual connection between you and the Heavenly Dragon Sword. I didn't say these words aloud, because even I found it inconceivable. Kanyuan, not only can it devour sword intent and rend space, it can even sever the link between a cultivator and their magical treasure. This is no longer in the realm of swords. This is order. How is this scrap metal? This is a fucking dimensional strike cheat code. Upon hearing my words, Long Outyin's blood boiled with rage, he spat out another mouthful of blood and collapsed straight back. The Deacon Elder rushed onto the stage and announced the result. In this match, Lin Yi wins. As his voice fell, the entire arena remained in dead silence. Everyone was still immersed in the perception-shattering scene from moments ago, unable to pull themselves out. I sheathed my sword, turned around, and prepared to leave the stage. Wait! Su Qingxue ran onto the stage and blocked my path. Her eyes were red, and the look she gave me was filled with guilt and remorse. Lin Yi, I'm sorry. Move. My voice was devoid of any emotion. Lin Yi, I know I was wrong. Can you give me another chance? She grabbed my hand, her voice trembling with a sob. Let's start over. You know you were wrong now? It's too late. A good horse doesn't graze on the grass it left behind, and it's not like you were a good horse to begin with. I shook off her hand. The force wasn't great, but her body swayed as if she might collapse at any moment. Without sparing her a single glance, I walked straight off the stage. As I passed the viewing platform, Elder Su fell to his knees with a thud. Lin Yi. No, Senior Brother Lin. I was blind. I was a dog looking down on people. I beg you to be the bigger person and forgive me. As he spoke, he slapped himself hard across the face. Slap. 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 The sounds were loud and crisp. The gazes of the surrounding elders and disciples had shifted from fear to awe. This is strength. This is reality. I did not stop my pace. I walked straight up to my master. Master looked at me with a complex gaze. There was surprise and relief, but more than that, there was a profound meaning that I could not quite decipher. You have done well, he spoke slowly. In your hands, this sword has not gathered dust. Your disciple wishes to know, what exactly is it? I asked, voicing the greatest doubt in my heart. Master remained silent for a moment before saying slowly, it has no name. Or rather, its name has long been forgotten. It is not a sword. It is a key. A key? So after all this time, I've been hacking people down with a key? I was full of confusion, but Master clearly had no intention of explaining further. He simply announced that the competition would continue. But everyone knew in their hearts that the competition had already ended prematurely. No one dared to step onto the stage to challenge me again. I, Lin Yi, as a mere handyman disciple, had become the undisputed number one of this sect competition. This result was like a stinging slap across the faces of everyone who had once mocked me. After the competition ended, I was called alone by Master to the restricted area of the back mountain. This was the very foundation of the Qingyun sect. Master led me to an ancient and dilapidated stone door. It was covered in intricate runes, emanating a desolate and powerful aura. In the very center of the stone door was an indentation. The shape of that indentation. I looked down abruptly at the Kanyuan in my hand. They were identical. Do you understand now? Master's voice rang in my ear. My heart trembled violently. So, my sword is the key to this door? What is behind it? Behind the door lies the true foundation of the Qingyun sect, and a secret that has been sealed away for 1,000 years. Master looked at me with burning eyes. 1,000 years ago, the founder of our Qingyun sect used what lies behind this door to sweep across the world and establish a peerless foundation. But later, for reasons unknown, the founder sealed this door and left an ancestral decree: it must not be opened except by the chosen one, and only in a moment of life or death. For these past 1,000 years, every generation of ours has been searching for the chosen one who can open this door. The heavenly dragon sword is the public token, meant to screen those with exceptional talent. But this piece of scrap metal is the true key. Master pointed at Kanyuan and sighed with emotion. It's just that none of us expected it would choose you in this manner. I fell silent. It turned out that from the very beginning, I was the one chosen. Not because of talent, nor because of bloodline, but because of that tiny, insignificant spark of kindness I showed back then, or perhaps, because we were kindred spirits. Go, Master patted my shoulder. Open it. Go see what the founder left behind. The future of the Qingyun sect may well depend on you. I took a deep breath and walked to the stone door. The hand holding Kanyuan trembled slightly. I slowly inserted Kanyuan into the groove in the center of the stone door. A perfect fit. Click, as if 1,000 years of accumulated power had suddenly erupted at this moment. The moment Kanyuan was fully inserted into the groove, the entire world seemed to go still. In the next second, an indescribably terrifying aura surged out from behind the stone door. It was not spiritual energy, nor was it demonic energy. It was an aura that transcended all powers, originating from the primordial chaos, the purest essence of destruction and creation. I was blown back by the force of this aura, the spiritual power within my body instantly suppressed until I could not move. Master fared even worse, he was forced directly to his knees, his face as pale as paper. Buzz, 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 the blade of Kanyuan began to tremble violently, letting out a piercing wail of sorrow. It was resisting. It was refusing. Something is wrong. The thing behind this door isn't a treasure, it's a malevolent entity. The realization hit me suddenly. Master also realized something was amiss. He roared at me with all his might, "Quick! Pull it out! Pull the sword out now!" I used every ounce of my strength, trying to pull Kanyuan out of the stone door. But it was too late. The runes on the stone door lit up one by one, emitting an eerie red light. A powerful suction force emanated from behind the door, tightly gripping Kanyuan and my hand along with it. My essence, my spiritual energy, and my soul were all being frantically devoured by that door. Ah! I couldn't help but let out a scream of agony. My skin began to wither, and my hair rapidly turned white. Lin Yi. Master's eyes nearly split with desperation. He wanted to rush forward to save me, but he was pinned down by that terrifying aura, unable to move a muscle. Am I going to die? I finally managed to show off a bit, and I'm going to die such a pathetic death? At the very moment my consciousness was about to be completely swallowed, a sudden transformation occurred. Kanyuan, which had been dormant all this time, merely passively absorbing energy, seemed to be thoroughly infuriated. It was no longer a key. It reverted to its original form. A sword. A resonant, high-pitched sword hum rang through the heavens and earth. It was no longer a wail, but a roar filled with fury and slaughter. The two thin crimson lines on the blade lit up instantly, transforming into two genuine blood dragons that coiled around the sword and roared at the sky. The deep, pitch-black blade also began to change. It was no longer a restrained black, but had become a type of void that devoured everything. The sword was no longer a sword. It was as if it had become a black hole connecting to an unknown dimension. Before the aura erupting from Kanyuan, the terrifying suction coming from behind the door was like a stream meeting the ocean. It was instantly devoured in reverse. The stone door trembled violently, and the runes upon it shattered one by one. From behind the door came a scream of absolute terror. The voice did not sound human, it was filled with eeriness and chaos. No! You are the end! Weren't you already? The voice cut off abruptly. Boom! The entire stone door, along with the space behind it, was completely devoured by the power erupting from Kanyuan, turning into nothingness. Everything was over. Peace returned to the world. It was as if nothing had ever happened. Only I remained, standing dazed in the same sword-holding posture. The Kanyuan in my hand had returned to its pitch-black, ancient appearance, but the two blood dragon patterns on the blade had become even more vivid. A cold, emotionless mechanical voice rang directly in my mind. Initial startup. System loading. Finality weapon system, binding host, Lin Yi. Detected Great Old One remains sealed in a low-level plane. Cleared. Novice quest completed. Reward, unlock weapon's first form, Severance. After all that, you're a fucking system? I stood there, my mind a complete blank. System? Finality weapon? Great Old Ones? Every single one of these terms was beyond my comprehension. I thought I was following an underdog counterattack script, but it turns out to be a sci-fi horror film? Master struggled to crawl up from the ground. He looked at me, then at the now normal Can Yuan in my hand, his eyes filled with awe and bewilderment. Lin Yi. Just now. What was that? What could I say? Should I tell him his founder sealed a Cthulhu, and it just got formatted by the system in my hand? I could only shake my head and feign innocence. This disciple doesn't know either. I just felt that it seemed to have awakened. Master sighed deeply and didn't press further. Some things are better left unknown. He simply patted my shoulder and spoke with gravity. From this day forward, you are the young sect leader of the Qingyun sect. This sword, and the entire Qingyun sect, are now in your hands. Having said that, he seemed to age 10 years in an instant as he turned and limped away. I watched his retreating back, then looked at the system in my hand. Young sect leader? Is this how a handover works? That's a bit too hasty. But I didn't have a choice. From the moment Can Yuan. No, from the moment finality chose me, my fate was bound to it. I returned to my new residence, the young master's hall that originally belonged to Long Outyen. It was magnificent and brimming with spiritual energy, countless times better than my old woodshed. But I was in no mood to enjoy it. I placed finality on the table and began to study this so-called system. System? You there? Let's talk? In my mind, that cold voice rang out once more. What are your instructions, host? What can you do? This system is the finality weapon system, designed to assist the host's growth and eliminate all enemies across the planes. Currently unlocked functions: weapon form switching, energy devouring, and information probe. As it spoke, a translucent panel that only I could see appeared before me. On the panel were my personal details. Host * Lin Yi. Realm * 5th layer of Qi refining, unstable foundation, recommended to recultivate. Cultivation method * Azure Cloud Mantra, trash, recommended to replace. Weapon * finality, first form, sever. Overall evaluation * a weakling with a combat power of 5. Isn't your evaluation a bit too blunt? The evaluation is based on data analysis and is absolutely objective. I took a deep breath, deciding not to argue with a system. Then tell me, what should I do? It is suggested that the host travel to Dragon Burial Valley to devour the earth vein dragon chi and reshape your foundation. Additionally, obtain the ancient dragon god art to replace your current cultivation method. A detailed map emerged on the panel, clearly marking the location of Dragon Burial Valley as well as the various dangers and opportunities within the valley. The information probe function? Isn't this just a portable GPS plus a walkthrough guide? My heart stirred. With this thing, the world is vast, where could I not go? The Azure Cloud sect was, after all, too small. My stage should be in a much wider world. Just as I was planning the blueprint for my future, a flurry of hurried footsteps came from outside the door. Young master! It's bad. The Heavenly Dragon Sword. The Heavenly Dragon Sword. It's shattered. A disciple came scrambling in, his face filled with terror. My heart skipped a beat, and I immediately followed him to Long Outyen's room. Long Outyen was still lying on the bed, unconscious. Beside his bed, the once radiant divine weapon, Heavenly Dragon, was now covered in cracks, its spiritual light dimmed like a piece of porcelain on the verge of shattering. I stepped forward, reached out, and gently touched the blade of the Heavenly Dragon Sword. In my mind, the system's voice rang out once more. Homologous key fragment detected. Devour? A homologous key fragment? So the Heavenly Dragon Sword was just a part of you all along? Everything became clear to me. No wonder the Heavenly Dragon Sword had been so excited to see Long Outyen back then, while Can Yuan had been rejected. It probably wasn't a matter of rejection, it was that a high and mighty entity like Finality simply looked down on Long Outyen's potential. Devour? The system's voice urged again. Devour. I commanded silently. The next second, a faint suction emanated from the palm I used to touch the Heavenly Dragon Sword. The sword let out a mournful wail as the last spark of spiritual light on its blade was completely drained by the finality in my hand. With a crisp snap, the divine weapon that once sparked the envy of countless people crumbled into a pile of dust before my eyes. Meanwhile, the two blood dragon patterns on finality's blade seemed to brighten just a touch more. Homologous key fragment devoured. Energy plus 10%. New function unlocked, disguise. Disguise can mimic the appearance and aura of any devoured weapon. With a thought, I whispered in my mind, Heavenly Dragon Sword. Finality flashed with light, instantly transforming into a golden longsword identical to the one from moments ago. It even mimicked that sharp sword chi to perfection. Impressive. It can even do cosplay now. I deactivated the disguise with satisfaction. This function was the ultimate tool for playing the pig to eat the tiger. Having finished with the Heavenly Dragon Sword, I turned to leave. However, a familiar figure stood at the entrance. Su Qingxue. Who knows how long she had been standing there? Her face was even paler than Long Outyan's. She looked at me, her eyes filled with fear, regret, and a sliver of pleading. Lin Yi. Her voice was so faint it seemed the wind would blow it away. I said nothing and simply walked past her. At the moment we passed each other, I heard her suppressed sobbing. I did not look back. Some people and some things, once missed, are gone forever. I returned to my hall and packed my bags. There wasn't much to pack, really, aside from a few changes of clothes. There was only finality. I left a letter for my master, telling him I was heading out to gain experience and seek an opportunity for a breakthrough. Then, in the darkness before dawn, I quietly left the Qingyun sect alone. Standing outside the mountain gate, I glanced back at the sect that had nurtured me for 10 years. This was my starting point, but it would not be my end. Dragon Burial Valley. Primordial Dragon God Art. I looked toward the direction marked on the map, a faint smile playing on my lips. The world is vast, I ought to see it. I strapped finality to my back. It still looked like that same piece of rusted scrap metal. One man, one sword. I set out on the true journey that belonged to me. What I did not know was that shortly after my departure, a legend began to spread throughout the entire cultivation world. The legend spoke of a demonic sword that held dominion over the end, reappearing in the mortal realm. Every time it surfaced, it signaled the curtain call of an old era and the dawn of a new one. Its name was Finality.